Why, hi there, I'm Ron Juckett, and joining me today is Ricky Keeler, and it's time for the DoDCast Postgame Show, a happy recap following another nail-biting win over the Atlanta Braves, this time 10-5, and as I see myself in the camera, someone has a little too much sun. I just said on Twitter just before we started that that this game is the microcosm, Ricky, for the entire Nats season so far.
Yeah, I definitely could see that because for some reason, when you look at the first 80-something odd games of the season, there's a lot of resiliency with this offense. They get a big lead comes down, but they still always seem, well, not always, but more often than not, they put 2 or 3 more runs on the board. They pad the lead. They put at-bats together. And we all know the anonymous quotes about how this offense feels they have to score like 10 runs every game. But to their credit, they still keep doing it. And,
well, they scored 10, I mean, that's...
But you just love that they can just put late inning rallies together, and you know that more often than not, they're going to put a crooked inning up in the late innings that changes the course of the game.
They feel like they kind of have to, though. I don't think they're wrong in that thought process, right?
No, I don't think they are either, and I'm not saying that I would disagree with them, but I just like the fact, like, you would see in a non-contending team, a team that would have to keep doing this would eventually, you would see them sort of struggle a little bit, but they just seem to always, well, we don't know what they're feeling internally. Maybe I'm sure they're all frustrated, but they seem to always just find a way to get the job done, and they know what's at stake. And you look at today's game, I'm looking at the ESPN box score, Ron, and the top 5 hitters in the lineup all saw over 20 pitches. Rendon was one shy of that, being 6 guys for 20
right,
pitches.
And he went 2 for 3 with 2 walks. All right, totals overall for the game, the Braves fall to 42 and 45, 5 runs, 7 hits, and an error for Atlanta. Washington goes to 52 and 36. It's their second best record at the break ever. 10 runs, 12 hits, and in 1 error. Grace gets the win. That's his first. And Newcomb, who pitches with the urgency of a teenage girl in algebra class, goes to, crunch letters to Ron, is now 1-4 on the year. Just an absolute interesting show. Now, Rick's on with us today because of Joe Ross, who left with 1 out in the 3rd inning. That's the big story going in. His fastball was getting to the point where, as Dave Jegler said on the radio, they were registering as changeups on the scoreboard. It's hitting 86, 87 miles an hour. So we think we're going to get some news on Joe Ross, and so we need that extra pair of hands with us today.
Yeah, that's the big concern from this game is, all 3 of us, Drew and Ron and I, were talking during the game, and there's really no panic when Ross throws 88, 89 because, let's be honest, he's been around that velocity all season long ever since Colorado. Nothing really has changed. He would hit 90, 91 on occasion, sometimes 92, but it just, the velocity's never been there. But to get it down to 86, 87, that's a problem. This isn't pitching in altitude. This is pitching in a relatively warm day in DC, no humidity unlike yesterday. So it's not the worst conditions. So you have to be concerned with what caused Joe Ross to leave.
He had 1 pitch today, I think, that traveled over 90.5, and he usually is around 90, 91, maybe 92 on a hard throw, and he just didn't have it. In that 4th inning, he walked 2 guys, and then was the home run for the 3-run homer, which tied the game at 3.
And that's not like Joe Ross at all. He's usually very good with his command.
Right. I mean, he got to back-to-back 0-2 counts on hitters. I forgot who they are off the top of my head because I'm trying to watch things at the same time as I'm talking to you. And then he lost him. He ended up a lot of full count walks. And you're right, that's not him at all. And there was no pitch there that was an out pitch. I mean, most of the outs he got in the first 3 innings were on the off-speed stuff, this 83, 84 mile an hour stuff.
And it's frustrating because you look at his last 2 starts for today. I thought he was really good against the Cubs in the game. The Nats bullpen blew a big opportunity to win that game. And then while while he wasn't great against the Mets, he still put up a relatively good outing and got some big outs when he needed it. He was looking like he was starting to come around, especially after those first couple innings. And then 1 inning later, we're back to wondering where the Nats' depth is injury-wise, because we still don't know if Steven Strasburg's bothered by that hip from yesterday.
The hip, or the fact that, he just seems to suffer from what looks like to me dehydration issues. We catch you up quickly with the chat. Seth said, hey, Ron, did not get to see the game. Was at the beach. It was actually a decent game, Seth. It was long. Heard Romero look great. We'll get to Eddie Romero in a couple minutes, Seth. He struck out Freddie Freeman with 2 runners on a 101-mile-an-hour pitch, and then got kept to swing and miss at 100. So, yeah, I mean, I won't talk about Romero now, but that's absolutely what you want to see. He was absolutely clutch today. We'll get to other games in a bit, Seth, along with Kyle Freeland taking a no-hitter in the 7th for the Colorado Rockies. I know you came to the game late today. Tell me what you saw out about Matt Grace.
Definitely, I like the fact that he's able to go out there and eat innings, because it's not like Matt Grace has come up to the bullpen and been terrible. If that were the case, he wouldn't still be here. So there's something Dusty Baker likes about him. He doesn't strike out a lot of hitters, but he goes out there, throws strikes, does his job. You don't have to worry about him walking 2 or 3 every inning. And you look at the 4 left-handers in the bullpen, whether it be Solis, Romero, Perez, and Grace. Grace is the kind of guy that you just go out there and you hope for consistency from him, because he doesn't wow you with stuff. But I was impressed outside of the 1 pitch to Camargo with what he did today.
Absolutely. And the fact that he was able to – he tired a bit. He wasn't used to throwing that many innings. But he came in a situation that could have been very bad and righted the ship. And you can't ask for anything more than that. Let's go through the pitching lines as Ricky switches over to Twitter. You haven't missed anything yet from whatever news the Nats have after the game. Joe Ross, 3 1/3 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs, all earned. He walked 2, both of those in the 4th inning. He struck out 3, and the home run, which ended up tying the game. He threw 63 pitches for 39 strikes. Only 3 of those were swings and misses, which is unusual for Ross. He gets a lot of movement on his pitches and pitches well. As we said, Grace, 2 2/3 innings, 2 hits. He pitched a little longer than he probably should have, but on a day like this, you don't have much of a choice. 2 runs, 1 earned. He walked 1 and struck out 1 and gave up a home run as well. Joe Blanton, he's now pitched, I believe I saw Ricky, in 7 straight games without giving up a run. He threw a clean inning today. He threw 11 pitches, and 6 of those were strikes. Eddie Romero, who allowed a leadoff hit to Camargo, who seems to be joining the Freddie Freeman as giant pains in the tuchus against the Washington Nationals. But he struck out Freddie Freeman at 101. I already said that. He struck out 2. He threw 21 pitches, 13 for strikes. Ollie Perez finds 1 batter in the 9th and gives up a double. And Matt Alvarez goes to the break with a clean 9th, with the clean last 3 outs, 11 pitches for 8 strikes. Newcomb, who I had not seen pitch for Atlanta before, 4 innings, 4 hits, 4 runs, all earned. He walked 4. That's my favorite number, 4. And 7 strikeouts, 97 pitches, and for 60 strikes. So that's pretty much takes care of what you need to know from the pitching today. What are you seeing different from Blanton?
Well, I was just looking at the lines from Blanton. In 3 of those 7 games, he's thrown 10 pitches or more. So he is going out there and been very economical. Now, he's had a couple of 1-pitch outs, so it's tough to really evaluate those games. But if you can just string a couple of those games together like he's doing and get some of that confidence back. Now, he has had a couple, like the last 3 games, a pair of fly ball outs. You never want to rely on those. And he's not exactly pitching in high-leverage situations. Outside of maybe the July 3rd game against the Mets, when they won 3-2 on the walk-off hit, and then the game against Chicago where he got Contreras to pop out in the first pitch. So I think the test with Blanton is going to come when the high-leverage situations show up.
And at this point, they kind of have to start throwing him into high-leverage situations, don't you think?
Absolutely. You're running out of guys that you can throw into high-leverage situations. I mean, Sammy Solis has to throw in garbage time. Alvar Perez is still technically kind of throwing in garbage time when he really shouldn't be. Really, the only guys you're seeing in big-time situations are Blake Trinan, who mysteriously warmed up and didn't come in the game again. I don't know why Dusty keeps doing that. Eddie Romero and Matt Albers. Those are really only the three guys you see in those big situations. You've got to start with a 9.5 game lead with only about 70 games to go. This is the time where you start seeing who can pitch where, what situations can they pitch, and what situations can't they pitch. The time for experimenting is over.
Absolutely. Let's go through the batting totals for you. Rendon with his 21st double of the year, Heisey with his second, and Murphy with his 29th, and that was big. That just put the game out of reach, and at 10-5 in the 8th inning. With runners in scoring position today, they were 7 for 16, a lot better than the 0 for 9 they were last night. They still stranded 8 runners, but when you score 10, it really doesn't matter how many you strand. For the Braves, of course, pitching to Freddie Freeman is hazardous to everyone's health. The 3-run homer in the third off of Ross, the third off of Ross, which tied the game. And a special shout out to Camargo. We don't usually do full-fledged kabooms for other teams' hitters, but that was his first major league home run. So I gave him a full-fledged kaboom.
They have some good depth in the middle infield. When you talk about Camargo and Swanson, you've seen Rio Ruiz earlier this year. So the Braves are that kind of sneaky team where they can keep up with the Nationals offensively. It's just a matter of their bullpen is a mess, and Newcomb's not ready yet to be the top-of-the-line guy that Tehran still is for them, and Fulton Ewitt's been impressive. He's just not there yet. But the Braves have talent. There's a reason why they're still competitive.
I don't see the Braves going away anytime soon. This was their 13th meeting of the year, and the Nats are now 7-6 against them. They come out with sharpened knives and claws and just play the Nationals very hard, which is good to see. You know, there's a good future in Atlanta. I'm still not quite convinced that Swanson is a major league ready hitter. Certainly is defensively, but not a hitter. Let's go through some other games of note today in the division. The Phillies, the Fightins, fought all over San Diego, 7-1. I believe that was Kaboom City up in Philadelphia today. Close your ears, Ricky. 6-0. The Cardinals beat the Mets today. So the Mets go the break in pretty rough shape. A couple games of note outside of the division. John Lester gave up 10 runs in the first inning. Rick says only 4 of those were earned. Pittsburgh beat the Cubs 14-3. And the Houston Astros go to the break, Ricky, with 60 wins. They absolutely demolished the Toronto Blue Jays today, 19-1.
Right now, the class of baseball going to the break is Houston and the Dodgers, and to be honest, it's not close.
No, you're absolutely right. Baltimore leads the Twins 11-5 in the bottom of the ninth. We said Freeland has a no-hitter going for Colorado against the White Sox, but the White Sox do have 2 on with nobody out in the top of the 7th.
Both walks, so he still has it.
Right. Miami is ahead of the Giants 3-2 in the top of the 5th. And there was one other game I wanted to mention, and I can't find it now. So that pretty much catches you up on everything you know elsewhere in Major League Baseball. I watched a little bit of the Houston-Toronto game yesterday. And, of course, we saw them a lot in spring training this year. I knew the Astros were good, but 60 wins good?
Remember, this is what Dallas Keuchel's been on the shelf for a little bit. Lance McCullers has been on the shelf for a little bit. They don't really have a reliable third starter, and yet they go out there and pound teams to death with their offense. It has the same depth that the Nationals have when they're fully healthy.
We're not getting any news on Joe Ross. You did not see him pitch today. He did not argue at all when trainers and coaches were called for. I mean, this was an absolutely terrible sign for what's going in. We were talking off air about what they would need to do for a potential starter. Now, talk about the one you think that Cincinnati could move.
Well, there's the names that have been thrown out there. Jerry Krasnick was tweeting during the game from ESPN that the price tag for Raisel Iglesias is astronomical. So throw that out there right now if you're thinking about Iglesias in a Curly W uniform. But I know Drew was talking off there about a guy like Scott Feldman, who you could bring in and help out as sort of that veteran guy. Probably doesn't cost much to get him, if anything. Cincinnati doesn't really need him because they're trying to establish as many young starters as possible. But I think right now your internal options, we don't know yet what the severity of an injury is, but Eric Fetty is not ready yet.
Yeah, we don't want to jump to conclusions either. But velocity change was noticeable. And at first we thought it was just the beat writers being bored, but it really was just, it was so obvious. And on those walks, which end up, ending his day. I mean, he just 0-2. He's not. I mean, he's a nibbler for sure, but he's not one that will go. He's not like Gio in that sense, where he will just walk people after going up on an 0-2 count. Tricep soreness for Ross. Dusty says he's in, or an MRI He's in, or an MRI right now. This is from one of the other Nats blogs. That's probably a bad sign. I trust the name enough to know that that's probably what we're going to hear. He's probably watching that off of Masson. So tricep soreness, which I guess kind of fits with the loss of velocity.
Keep in mind, this is the same Joe Ross that missed most of the last 3 months of the regular season last year with an injury. I think it was to his shoulder. So he's had his fair share of injuries over the last few years. There's a reason why his innings workload is not high. So that is definitely a sign to consider if Ross has to go in is already in an MRI tube. Definitely a big sign of concern right now.
So Edwin Jackson, as you said before we actually hit the start button, is probably going to be the option coming out of the break now. Right now, how long has he thrown?
Jackson's been there a few starts. He at least has starter experience this year in the minor leagues. They got him a few weeks ago when Baltimore released him. He has actually been really good. Now, the walks are a little bit high, but he's given up, I think, 2 hits in a total of 4 games. He's not throwing 9 innings a game, but he's a guy right now you can plug into your rotation. He has major league experience. He can give you 5-6 innings, as Jacob Turner's not been good since going back to the Syracuse rotation. A.J. Cole gave up 8 runs the other day in less than 3 innings. He's not coming back. And Eric Fetty is just getting stretched out to a starter again. Yes, last night he was excellent. 3 perfect innings, 4 strikeouts, but he's only thrown 3 innings at most in 2 games. He has to get the workload up, I think, to 85, 90 and establish consistency before you even think of calling him up.
So this is just in from Byron Kerr. Dusty says Joe Ross, tricep tenderness, taking MRI now, no result yet. Craig Heist, who also is with 106.7 The Fan, Dusty says Joe Ross is getting an MRI after some tricep tenderness. Velocity was down to 87, 89. 2 walks before Freeman homer was a sign. I would not read, I saw a couple tweets go by that said that it could be worse. It could be a lot better too. An MRI, an immediate MRI, just strikes me as something pretty serious.
Yeah, and this is where we talk about the Adam Eaton deal. We haven't talked about it much since the season began. This is where you miss Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez, because those are 2 guys you would plug into your rotation right now. And Lopez showed good signs. Giolito, I'm sure, looked at 10 strikeouts last night in AAA.
Dusty says he did not, from Chelsea Janes. Ross, we know the injury. As far as Dusty knew, just popped up today. So this was not something that Ross tried to pitch through, as far as we know. But we know the Nats can be a little loose with the truth at times. But I can't imagine if there was this isn't like the Syndergaard situation with the Mets. If they knew he was hurting in his arm, they weren't going to send him out there.
No, especially with his history, you can't afford to send him out there. And that's now, or you rely on Tanner Roark to hopefully figure out something from yesterday. You rely on Steven Strasburg that hopefully that hip is okay. We haven't heard anything. Remember, Dusty doesn't meet with the reporters pre-games on Sundays. So I'm interested to see if he said anything in how Strasburg is feeling today. He hasn't said that yet, but you have to rely on Max, Strasburg, Gio, and hopefully Roark found something, because those are the 4 guys that you need. And luckily, I think they have a lot of days off after the All-Star break. They have the day off in Los Angeles. I think they have a day off after Arizona as well. So they do have 2 days off after this week anyway. So a lot of days off in July.
They have more days off, I believe, in the next three weeks than they had the last 6 weeks.
And you could see how tired they are when they play. I mean, guys like Brian Goodwin are still doing okay, but they're not performing the way they were a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, a guy, a little case in point, is Ryan Zimmerman, who's not getting the lift on the baseball anymore. He's finding holes and he's getting the base hits, but he hasn't hit a home run since June 13th.
His launch angle is down to 7.3. I believe Tom Boswell pointed that out on Twitter, which puts him right back to where he was last year.
He hasn't. Remember, he's only played over 100 games once in the last 3 years. So,
right,
as he hits the 70, 80 game point, this is where you watch the fatigue is. Because Dusty has sat him a couple of times this week, and then he had the day off Wednesday with the rain delay. So he's really had 3 days off this week, and he is still getting his hits. To be fair, so he hasn't been terrible. But when what was he yesterday? Like 7 for 21, but all 7 hits were singles.
Right.
That's when I start to get a little bit worried.
Right. All right. So I'll throw this question out to you, and I think we're going to disagree with the answer here, and I think that's actually fine. You have a chance to go to win a World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I honestly think with this offense, this offense is a championship offense. Do you throw caution into the wind and trade a Robles or a Soto to get an Iglesias? If that's the one piece you need, do you do it?
Juan Soto, I think about. I'm starting to get a little bit worried about Soto. He had been rehabbing in the GCL, but he came out of the game after 1 at bat yesterday. I don't know why he was not in the lineup for them today. So hopefully there'll be news on that if he is hurt again. So that maybe is something where I might think about Juan Soto because he's not in my long-term plans, at least the immediate long-term plans. You can't trade Victor Robles. The only way you can trade Victor Robles is if Bryce Harper has a long-term extension on the dotted line, because Robles, if Harper leaves, is probably the key piece to your outfit. He's been hitting the ball great in high A. He's in today's futures game, hasn't played yet, but he'll probably get in soon. So if you're watching, go to MLB Network, watch the futures game. It's a lot of fun. And
this is up 7-0, by the way.
Yeah, there's been a couple of really good players. Everybody's got good players, but
yeah.
No question. But you look at, he's going to be in Double-A, I think, fairly soon for a 19, 20-year-old. That's impressive. This kid's got so much talent. To me, he's one of only a couple untouchables. I think Fetty's untouchable because you don't have any starter depth. And the other guy I might throw out there, hopefully he gets back soon, is Keyboom.
Yeah, I think Fetty and Keyboom are the only 2 untouchables. I think, listen, I've grew up with the team that I waited till I was in my 30s to watch a World Series. There are people that to win a World Series. There are people who, just like Cubs fans last year, who waited their entire lives and their grandparents to win a World Series. If you think that gets you over, you do it. Simply because you don't know when you're going to get the chance again. But that's just there's a lot of ifs there. But I really think that they need to seriously consider, if this is their best chance, you can't sit there and go through and get bounced out in the first round again. I mean, that's what irritated everyone last year. It's not just enough anymore to win the division. And I think, I know we don't agree on this, but I think that's pretty much the internal conversations they're having in there. I mean, someone who I work with and respect a great deal says, you don't parade on prospects. And I agree with that. As much as you hate to even think about giving that up. I mean, look, somehow this is a 52-win team. We sit here night after night pulling our hair out. See, I had a full head of hair at one point. Going, how in the world is this a 52-win team? How are they doing this night after night? They have no closer. They really have no setup people, and they're burning through their starters like it's 1975. But yet here they are with a 9.5 game lead in the division. I mean, how can you explain to your fans, oh, we felt like we didn't want to do it? I mean, I don't know what they do. But if that really is what gets a deal done, how can you not consider it?
The only name I would maybe consider, because Iglesias, member, is also unproven. You have a guy that doesn't have the track record.
Absolutely.
Of that's a huge risk you're taking. The one guy that will never come here because of who the owner is with the other team is Zach Britton. I mean, Zach Britton, if healthy, is a game changer. Now, he hasn't proven to be healthy this year.
You might as well consider that even more of an in-division trade than Reed with the Mets.
Right. But you also have to consider, you look at even the East is probably one. Look at the potential NLDS right now. Milwaukee's got a 5.5 game lead in the Central. And unless Chicago's got some big Verlander trade up their sleeve, and they're running out of prospects to deal. St. Louis, I don't really trust St. Louis. You're looking at an NLDS matchup with Milwaukee. I think this group of players, if you get one or two minor moves, can beat Milwaukee. Here's the question you have to answer. Are you an immediate big-time guy away from beating LA in a best of 7? And with the other guy in the mound in LA, I don't think so, because the Nats still have not beaten Kershaw in a long time.
Yeah, but Kershaw on a maximum can throw 3 times unless he comes out and does what he did last year.
He'll throw 4 if they get to a game 7. I hate looking that far. He'll throw them if it means that he's in their head so much.
Yeah, because the Dodgers haven't been to a World Series in 30 years. I mean, I don't want to say anyone is desperate, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah, no, of course. I think do I trade Andrew Stevenson? Yeah. Do I trade Drew Ward? Yeah. Luzardo? Yeah. But I'm not in the position yet where I'm going to say, here, take my star outfielder of the future, and I got one outfielder on an ACL tear coming back next year. And I don't know what my future is with Bryce Harper.
Okay. Then do you give Romero a shot at closer?
Somebody's got to take a shot at closer. I don't care who it is. And that's been the not blessing of this team. There's rarely ever a save situation with this team. They're either up by 5 or they're down by 5, or they get 3 runs in the 8th where their save turns into a non-save.
Today, that's exactly what happened today.
I think the last save chance was Trinan in Chicago.
And we know how well that went.
And that went poor because Dusty used Matt Albers and Eddie Romero all 3 days. He's tried Romero. It failed. I love what I saw today. But to me, I got to reward the guy with the most consistency, and that's still Matt Albers. Remember, Romero hasn't thrown in a week.
Because he was overused.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you have a couple favorable opponents out of the break. Cincinnati, the Angels are about a 500 team. They're going to get Trout back, but even then, they're not a great team.
Yeah, you got about
it's only 2 games anyway.
You got 6 easy games, Ricky, until you get into the frying pan. Because after you're done with the 4 against the Reds and the 2 against the Angels, then it's a short series against the Diamondbacks. No, it's 3 against the Diamondbacks, isn't it? And then you're coming home for the Brewers and the Rockies.
Yeah, but you're hoping when you get into Arizona that Jason Worth is there.
Yes.
Dusty said yesterday that they're aiming for that series. And you hope that the 10 days is right around when Michael Taylor's back.
And I really hope that's a 10-day, and a true 10-day injury and not something that drags on and on and on. Let me really quickly go through what's going on in the minor leagues. Hagerstown and Kannapolis have moved to the top of the second game of their doubleheader. Since I haven't scrolled down yet, I don't know who won the first game, but Hagerstown leads 1-0 early. Auburn and State College will play tonight at 6:05. DeRussier pitching for Auburn, 1-1 with a 2.12 ERA. And let's see, Rochester beat Syracuse 8-2. O'Sullivan won the loss. He goes to 1-2 with a 4.40 ERA. Garver for Rochester had 3 home runs. Erie beat Harrisburg 7-4 in Eastern League action. Dustin McGowan goes to 0-5 with a 10.13 ERA. Guess he's not the hope for the future. Drew Ward with the 7th of the year for Harrisburg. Potomac 4 hit today by Wilmington. Williams with the loss 0-1. Must be a new call-up because he has no ERA. No home runs in that game. Hagerstown loses the first of the doubleheader 3-2. Pena takes the loss 4-5 with a 5.59 ERA. Ogston, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, with his 4th of the year. But the Gulf Coast League Nats are now 8-3. They beat the Cards today 4-3. Ramirez with his first win. No ERA. Johnson with a home run. So that takes care of what's going on down.
And Luis Garcia, one of their international signings last year, shortstop in that game, went 5 for 5.
5 for 5. They scored all 4 of the runs in the first 2 innings. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much killed all the time that we can. We know what's going on with Joe Ross. So tomorrow we'll probably update once we know more about what happened. But as we said, this has not looked all that promising so far. MRI after tricep injury. Let's see, what went up on the site today? Ricky had a profile of Victor Robles going up the prospect list. as he plays in the Futures game, which he did not start. Hopefully he comes in soon for them. And Drew talks about our player of the week, which is Wilmer Defoe. So you can give this a like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a follow on Twitter at District On Deck. Like us on Facebook. And, of course, the website itself is districtondeck.com. We will be with you again Tuesday night after the All-Star game to talk about the 5 that played there. And the 3 of us are going to get to – is it Thursday we're all getting together?
We're hoping to do some kind of show Thursday. I don't know who will be on it, but somebody will be on it, and we'll have some fun with that.
So for those of you who just really enjoy spending time with us, and we appreciate that, we'll have 2 shows for you during the break. On Tuesday after the All-Star game, and on Thursday, something just for fun. And so for Ricky and the rest of the staff at District On Deck, I'm Ron Juckett. Have yourself a wonderful Sunday.